Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Game Break, an ongoing series where me and my crew take a break from our creative endeavors and enjoy other people's creative endeavors through the form of video games. I'm Charles, coming to you today with another episode of World End Economica. Now, last time round, we sorta, kinda, maybe, possibly made peace with Hagana. Hopefully, possibly, that would be nice. And looks like Hal is trying to figure out a bit what to do with this stock challenge or financial challenge of beat the virtual stock market in 40 days to get noticed on Schrödinger Street. Not quite sure how that's going to play out. So let's just dive right in, see where this takes us. Due to what happened with Hagana, and also not being able to find a good investment technique, I stared blankly at the trading on the investment contest's virtual market. I wasn't really trading, but while looking at the movement of stocks, I was checking out what would happen if I bought a certain stock here or there. The result was a feeling that it could both go well and not go well. However, I kind of knew the cause of all of this. It was definitely Hagana. However, it wasn't about whether Hagana hated me or misunderstood me. What Hagana said started to stab at me, bit by bit.
We are doing all that we can to survive. We are different from someone like you, who was born on the moon.
The people from the town I lived in came from troubled parts of the earth. For someone like me, born on the moon, I had yet to know how terrible the moon could be. However, the people who came from Earth knew about its ills and also those of the moon. Having these words thrust at me like that, there was nothing I could say in response. Nothing in response to being called a spoiled brat with his head in the clouds. Well, it was true that I left home because of a dream even I thought ridiculous. Furthermore, trading had recently not gone too well, and I felt I was at a standstill, lost. However, that didn't mean that I wasn't trying my best at life. Realizing that I was making such excuses, I noticed that apparently I felt morally inferior to Earth folks, even more so than I had imagined. They were folks with dirt on their feet who worked hard to get to the moon. They abandoned their hometowns and came to a new frontier. Otherwise, they would have been dragged along by the unreasonable systems in place in the world. When it came to understanding the harshness of reality, I hadn't really had the same experiences Hagana had. I wasn't an adult like Lisa, either. Even though I had managed to earn 70,000 mools, it wasn't like any hard-working person couldn't save that up, and it certainly wasn't enough to live on for the rest of one's life. Rather, if my trading hadn't gone well, I would have been a classic moon-bred loser with no education, no money, and no idea of the hardships of Earth. I suddenly lost confidence in what I had been doing when Hagana told me those things straight to my face. Perhaps something was wrong with me, since I had pondered this simplistic plan of collaborating with the math whiz Hagana just because things hadn't been going well. If good things happen just like that, then no one in the world would suffer. Since my trading had originally gone pretty well, perhaps I thought the world was a pretty easygoing place, and I was the only one who realized it. A pampered kid who knew nothing about the world. I then realized that, as unbearable as it was, I had to live with that moniker. I couldn't focus on trading the stocks in the investment contest, as it seemed that something was clouding my thoughts. I felt worry, hesitation, and anguish as I stretched out on the ground. And then, my mind hit upon one thing, and that was when I was summoned to Lisa's room, and the sensation I felt from her hug. Lisa was a kind and wise adult. What would happen if I sought advice from Lisa? Would she show me the right thing to say? I was honestly thinking about something this pitiful. Dude, asking for help from others is not pitiful. I wondered where that brutish motivation had gone, the motivation I had right after I left home. Perhaps I was just naive about how society works. Perhaps I didn't have grandiose dreams to go where no one had gone before, and to be the only one to rise where no one had before and leave my footprints there. I kind of realized that I was about ready to tear up. Even though I knew that thinking about it only made things worse, I could not stop. That is why, if I didn't hear a strange sound from afar just then, I might have drowned in a vortex of my own insecurity. I opened up my eyes and looked towards the door, and after a brief moment I could hear that sound again. The ding-dong sound was akin to wood being struck. It was then that I realized someone was at the door. However, despite that fact, I decided to continue to lie down and sleep on the floor. The sound came a third time after a brief pause. Somehow or another, I had a sense that it was sounding more impatient. Speaking of visitors, Chris came by last time. It seemed that she was delivering things for the family business during the lunch break from school without stopping to eat. If it was Chris at the door, it would be a shame for her to waste her time. At that moment, the intercom chimed, and I stood up and headed out of the room, figuring that Hagana was not going to come out. The intercom chimed 4 times, and then a 5th time. If it was Chris, it was possible that she really needed to use the toilet. Thinking about that, I opened the door to the church after rubbing my eyes, just in case. At that instant, I felt it was plain good luck that I didn't instinctively send my fist flying out. It's the funds collector guy, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I don't remember his voice. Is Lisa in? The sound of the intercom chiming a 5th time almost sounded resentful of the long wait as I came upon the gloomy face at the door. It was Toyama, the moneylender. However, the intensity of that gloominess was lost, most likely due to his obvious fatigue. What do you want? Lisa is in today, right? Toyama didn't respond to my question, so I asked his once and more. I got annoyed instantly, but I did realize that it was probably just a mere outburst of anger. She ain't in. She isn't in? She said something about going to the university and took off. Ah, helping out with a lecture then. Toyama understood at once and nodded. It seemed that he knew more about Lisa than I did. I see, but if she's helping with classes at the university, then she should be returning soon. Would you mind if I waited for her? As he said that, he tried to slip past me and head into the church, but I grabbed his shoulder reflexively. The difference in strength was clear. I thought that Toyama would recoil from this, but he just turned, looked at me, and spoke in a seemingly sad tone. "It's important." Ah. Before I knew it, I had let go of Toyama's shoulder. There was an unknown intensity, one a child might not have perceived, maybe, but it was definitely there. "Most appreciated." On top of that, he bowed his head lightly. I said nothing else and just mumbled to myself, "May I come in?" After hearing the circumstances, I could only let him through. But, Hagana is in an unbelievably bad mood. I said this with complete seriousness, to which Toyama smiled wearily. For a brief moment his shoulders swayed as he smiled silently and coughed as he sighed. "I will be careful. However, kid, you know how things are supposed to work in this world, right?" Perhaps he wanted to ask me to protect him if Hagana started calling him names again. I felt it was only fair. But I'd be so happy if I got acknowledged for that. It was just like Lisa said. I hid my embarrassment and turned away. "You may come in." "Pardon my intrusion." I let Toyama inside the church and closed the door. Toyama removed his hat and bowed his head a bit in front of a crucified, bearded man located straight across from the entrance. Was the matter so important that he had to pray to God? I thought about that as I led Toyama in. I brought the old guy some coffee and intended to seclude myself in my room, but I realized that was not the right thing to do, and so as a compromise I brought my computer out to the living room. Toyama sat on the sofa by the coffee table while I sat at the dining table, which still had a couple sandwiches left on the plate, and I tapped away at my computer. Even though I couldn't really concentrate, I could take a look at what kind of stocks were in this virtual market. In any case, while glancing at the popular stocks, I started developing a hunch that these stocks were not fully fictitious and were actually based on real stocks, in line with rumors circulating on the net. "Are you playing some sort of game?" Toyama asked me as he poked his nose in on what I was doing. "Something like that." I see." He sipped his coffee and appeared uninterested as he looked from afar. He spoke again while in that state. "Is it interesting?" "Don't ask me such strange questions," I thought to myself as I looked up. "I guess." "I see." "What?" "Oh, nothing. I just thought it was nice that it was interesting." I shrugged my shoulders and returned to the screen. "Your days must be difficult." At my words, he craned his neck towards me. However, instead of getting angry, he laughed hoarsely. "It isn't so bad, but I guess it's because of this face. People often think that way because of it." He rubbed his chin as he answered, and I did something rather unexpected in response. I looked right back at him, wondering if he really could joke around like that. "You have a pretty good-looking face, though. It'll probably do you some good in the future." His words of praise were to the point. My chin was lowered as I looked at Toyama, who just laughed quietly. "You might have thought I was joking, but I know a thing or two about this. Well, it's not like I'd say you were a pretty boy, but what I said was my first impression." When I gave up trying to figure out whether he was praising me or not, Toyama gave a low laugh. "To put it simply, it's a matter of who is capable and who is incapable. This was one of the few things I learned through money lending." "With that said, where do you stand?" "Me? I am well. You can throw me in the lot of those who are not so capable." He rubbed his chin again as he spoke. Though he wasn't fat, his skin was saggy and his eyes showed fatigue. When he laughed, I could see some irregular teeth that made me think of a zombie out of a horror flick. Well, stubbornness is a selling point. Most of the time it wouldn't go well, but no matter where, one could find a place to get by. Well, I guess they are like mice. I see. I ended up laughing dryly at how apt his self-description fit. To that point, Lisa's reliable, even though she is young. That's something you're born with and not something you can train yourself to do. She is reliable. That was a good description of Lisa. Well, what about Hagana? He piqued my interest, so I tried asking him that. Toyama grimaced upon hearing Hagana's name, thinking back to what happened before, but he nodded in response and answered, "As for that girl, I'm not too sure." Well, it is true. I can see that she is clever, but that is about it. Hiding in a shell within oneself, it's like a young bird who hasn't hatched from its egg. What does that mean? You don't get it, do you? After coming to the moon to lend out money, occasionally you run into people like that. In those cases, well, there are many here from Earth who have talent that can be bought. My face froze for a bit, but Toyama just happened to reach out for his cup, wanting to sip some more coffee. I told myself he couldn't have seen my expression. Money lending is less about the exchange of money and more the exchange of trust, understand? If asked if I understood, it would be annoying to say that I didn't, but I didn't really understand, so I shook my head, annoyed. Ha! Promising, when dealing with someone like me, to be able to precisely answer that you don't understand when you don't is certainly an asset. I was not happy with him, of all people, praising me. That's what I wanted to say, but being complimented did feel nice, at least. Anyhow, I've been in this line of work ever since I graduated from college back on Earth. For 20 years, I've been determining whether or not to loan out money to people. What I learned was that the financial standing of a lendee was one thing, but the real important matter was their character. Even if someone doesn't have any money, if he's a good person, he will without a doubt return it. On the other hand, if someone is of a bad disposition, then no matter the amount of money, they will not pay it back at all. But there's another type of person that you shouldn't loan money to, and that would be people like that girl. Toyama once again sipped on his coffee. For someone lending money in a less fortunate, run-down area like this, there was some level of emphasis in his words. Toyama was strangely persuasive, as if he'd learned how to be from some unfortunate event in his own life. How do you say it? She's tenuous, I guess. Tenuous? Exactly. She's not completely removed from reality, but I get the feeling that she isn't firmly planted in it. Up to a certain point, she's just like other people. She would grit her teeth like normal people, be happy like normal people, and get angry like normal people. But once that point is surpassed, there's only resignation. And because of that, she wouldn't even mind dying. Perhaps she doesn't feel like she has any value. I don't think she really thinks of herself as something precious. Toyama stopped talking, and a distant look came into his eyes. Perhaps his eyes were reflecting on a life that wasn't so straightforward. If one doesn't even believe in one's own importance, then there's no way one would value the money of others. Things that won't be paid back, won't be paid back. And that is that. You do not think about what others think. You don't pay heed to how you are. No matter what happens, everything is viewed through a cynical lens. Lending money to people like that is not possible, no matter how talented they are. You've loaned out money to such people before. Yes, I have. While on Earth, I was a banker. In order to start a business, many people came to me. There were people like that. People more pathetic than myself, who'd hid a ruinous mindset in their hearts. But they appeared to be excellent candidates. A large amount of money was loaned out. At first, all went well. But at some point or another, they stumbled, and I looked on, wondering if they were fine with that. For myself, this is a business where I must have faith in the lendee to lend them money. For the person I can trust and loan money to, if a simple failure makes them shrug their shoulders, throw everything away, and then proceed to simply be tired of life and hang themselves, well, I would be equally disappointed. I didn't like this kind of talk. Toyama, who was doing that kind of talking, didn't seem to enjoy it either. That girl gives off this mentality. But she is still young, and it is fortunate that she crossed paths with someone like Lisa. Very lucky. If one's luck is good, then one can break out of the egg. Doing so, they are able to chirp and warble. To be able to raise one's voice like that is one way to endure through life. In that regard, kid, you don't seem like one to be timid, and thus perhaps nothing troubles you either. Toyama seemed to be laughing mockingly at me, which was enough to anger me, but I no longer thought of him as a bad guy, at the very least. An unfortunate person, perhaps, but he didn't seem to be bad. Besides, she still has something to protect, so that girl is indeed lucky. When I came here to collect the interest, she was really quite hostile. That girl, she ran away from home, right? On hearing that suddenly, I couldn't hide my facial expression. Toyama looked at me calmly and shrugged his shoulders a bit. Lisa was the first person who stood up for me, I suppose. It was as if God or perhaps Buddha manifested themselves, I suppose. Hey, kid. What? Well, it's understandable for you to seethe with rage and to vilify me, but you must protect a girl like that. People like that aren't bad themselves. It's mostly just the environment they were brought up in. She came from an ashen-colored country where there were boundless crags and needle-sharp conifer tree forests. The winters were long, the summers were short, and the sky would sometimes open up into blue so brilliant you'd believe it was God's work. I couldn't imagine Hagana leading a happy life. Besides, until we went into that clothing store, I felt Hagana was close to me. Even Hagana's strong-armed haggling was the result of her determination, according to Lisa. Nonetheless, I did not know about that, and I had rejected Hagana's sincerity. Furthermore, I had ended up paying off the interest for Lisa, someone Hagana tried in vain to protect. Though she might have been grateful, to go any further would put Hagana in an awkward position. Even though she was angry at me, there was probably nothing she could do. Besides, she's a cute girl, is she not? Well, even her foul mouth and cuteness wouldn't be a match for my daughter. I couldn't tell if that last set of words were a joke or not. But those words made it worth it for me to hear him out, and I forced out some laughter through my nose. Well, looks like I was talking a bit too long there. There isn't anyone who would take the time to listen to me. Toyama laughed in embarrassment and drank his coffee. I thought his smile looked unreasonably cool, and I was about to say that there were certainly people who'd want to listen to him. But the sound of a door farther down the hallway opening and closing prevented these words from coming out. "Ah, looks like Lisa is back." Toyama said that as he put down his coffee cup.
Unfortunately, we're gonna have to stop it there. This was an interesting part to the story. I am very curious to see just how this goes down. So we at least seem to have neutralized Hagana's anger for the moment, and we got to have a very interesting talk with Mr. Toyama. It's nice to see that he actually has some depth to him rather than just him being a throwaway character of frustration. And he does have some legitimately decent advice. He seems to have lived a very diverse life so far, so he's actually learned some lessons that are worth imparting on some comparatively young and impetuous characters that we're interacting with. I'm really curious, how is Hal going to discuss with Hagana and Lisa, presumably, about this challenge? Because, they're eventually going to team up to do this and make this be a thing that happens. I can't see it going any other way. The question is, how do they go about it? And how long is it going to take for them to figure this out and play nice? And is Mr. Toyama going to play a part? We'll see, but this is a very interesting story so far. I'm really enjoying how the characters are growing and becoming more three-dimensional, I guess it would be. Granted, Hal is still kind of a teenager with some of his mentalities, but I think he's going to learn, hopefully he'll learn, but I think he's going to actually grow up a bit by the end of this. He better. I really hope he does, because otherwise he's just an ass. But I really want to keep going down this story and see just how does this play out, because I'm still getting similar vibes from the writer in the same style of Spice and Wolf, but this is a lot more financial based than just economics. Then again, Spice and Wolf is a lot faster paced than this one, because that one's a manga and an anime, but visual novels, they seem to be a lot slower burn in regards to character arcs and story arcs and all that. So yeah, it's gonna be real interesting to see where this all boils down. I'm hoping that I get some time to play more of this in the near future so I can find out and see just where this story goes. And are there going to be any more fun animation sequences? Because the one we had a while ago now was really, really cool. And I want more of that. But in the meantime, we're going to have to wait and see what happens next time. Thank you all for joining me. Now go hit that subscribe button so you can check in next time round and see all the other stuff that we're doing. And go forth and be creative.